How many S's in the word success? You think you know? But we'll tell you this week on Motoring 2006.
TSN's Motoring 2006 is brought to you by the new Q from Quaker State. Unleash all your horses.
You know, when auto manufacturers introduce a new vehicle, it's always the same old, especially at car shows. They're always very excited about the new vehicle. It's always best in performance, best in luxury, best in safety, and so on. Anything to give you a reason to buy that car. Well, you know, the Germans, well, they put it on a whole different level. I mean, take Mercedes, for instance. They're all about luxury, and the one car that says it all is the S-Class. Well, why should you buy an S-Class? Well, let me show you here. Bear with me. This is right from the horse's mouth. The S-Class, it will come to you when fate has ordained that your life should take that course. Tell that to your bank manager. Anyway, the S-Class has been around for more than half a century. And this week we're in beautiful Italy to check out the newest edition. And as you're about to see, the new S-Class is not the same S-Class that Grandpa drove.
The S-Class is our top-of-the-line luxury vehicle. It's always have been our most innovative vehicle. It stands for the biggest comfort and safety in the class, and it's absolutely the top-of-the-line vehicle. That car goes back more than 5 decades, and it always had set standards in the segment. Since the early 50s, the S-Class is introduced, and we are now in the 9th generation. The design was centered around the idea to be more status-oriented and prestige, but also keep it simple. And so when you look at the grille of the vehicle, you see a 3-dimensional grille. That's really much based on the heritage of the vehicle, but it's also keeping the design clean. And you see a lot of designs being simple and clean are the most difficult to achieve to look beautiful. And I think we've done a good job on that.
I'm involved in the S-Class since 1993. It's my 3rd S-Class. It's continued, its heritage, it has more prestige, and we have the car stands on 4 columns. It's the design, it's the safety, it's the comfort, and it's the driving dynamics.
This is a very interesting car. The design-wise also, especially the rear end, is going to be quite controversial.
Does it look a bit like a BMW, the back end?
It makes you think it is like that, but yesterday on the highway there was a 7 Series in front of us, a new one, and a colleague driving a new S-Class, and they're quite different because the S-Class has some kind of shoulder.
There is one question that matters about this car. Is it as good as the BMW 7 Series? BMW says it's the driver's car, the ultimate driving machine, and Mercedes is sort of the car if you've got a chauffeur to take you around town. This, in fact, is a driving car. I think this thing, I mean, we screamed up and down mountain roads. You can throw this thing around just as well as a BMW, and that's important for Mercedes.
It's an interesting evolution because before it was just a plush car, I mean, more luxurious than fun to drive, and now they have dialed in some driviness in it, and I like it. I mean, it's still a luxury car than an Autobahn cruiser, but in the twisty roads to come here to St. Moritz, it held its ground pretty well.
People that drive this car, are they getting younger? Is that important to bring in young people? What are the demographics, you know?
Yeah, I think our normal S-Class driver is around about 55 years old. Not only in Germany, it's nearly the same in the States or in other countries. I think the S-Class is a car that needs a very standing man, and it's not for a young person. But we have also young businessmen. They are 35 years old and drive an S-Class.
We did a great deal on improving the existing chassis, but we also invented new things, the Distronic Plus, our advanced brake assistance. Those are innovations going into the car, but we also have a great deal of evolutionary features in the car. It has a great history of introducing high technology to the automotive market, but it also always cascaded technology into our car lines, even to our competitor ranges. We introduced ABS, ESP, airbags. That all came from the S-Class, and you find it in our models, and you also find it in our competitor models by now.
They have this smart sort of cruise control now that slows you down when you come up behind a car. This Mercedes actually stops you. It will bring you to a complete halt, which is very impressive technology, but the land is run by lawyers. You know, the litigation crowd in the United States, as soon as one of these Mercedes hits the back of someone will say, oh, you know, the automatic brakes didn't work, and they're going to sue. I wouldn't want to be first with this technology. It's great technology. I love the science, I fear the lawyers.
That car has a great success story also since 50 years. We have been market leader worldwide in that segment, and we intend to continue that story against our competition.
Okay, do not leave key in car. That's on page 742. I'll be back later on Kenzie's Corner. Oh yeah, here it is.
You know, the people tasked with designing the third generation Mazda MX-5 were given a seriously difficult job. They had to make it bigger, they had to make it safer, and they had to put more stuff in it, but whatever they did, they could not make it any heavier. This week on Test Drive, we take a look at the fruits of their labour. Ever since its launch, the Miata, which is now officially called the MX-5 for some stupid reason, has represented what British sports cars from the 60s could have become had they been allowed to mature. Simply stated, the car has a fun quotient that far exceeds any of its hard numbers or practicality. Now, all of this comes about because of a number of good things. First and foremost is the increase in size. It's 40mm longer and wider, 15mm taller, and enjoys a 65mm stretch in the wheelbase, all of which gives the car a much more substantial footprint and a perfect 50-50 weight distribution front to rear. You know, when Mazda started designing this MX-5 platform, they looked long and hard at the RX-8 and came up with some of its very good ideas. For instance, on the central tunnel, two fully boxed frame rails that run all the way from the firewall to the rear bulkhead. Underneath the car there's a major cross brace in the form of an X-brace. There's another cross car brace here which also supports the rollover hoops. The net result, it doesn't matter really how hard you drive this car on a rutted road, it just doesn't shake and shimmy. It really is one of the better platforms out there. The reason for the lack of shake and shimmy is that the chassis is 22% stiffer in bending and a whopping 47% stiffer torsionally. The really good news is that adding all of the strength did not up the car's mass significantly. To put this into perspective, just upsizing the wheels and tyres from the previous car's 15 inches to the now standard 16 inches adds 12 kilograms alone, and yet the car actually tips the scales at 1.6 kilograms less than the outgoing car. You know, you've already got a top-notch chassis, a great suspension and wonderful tyres. If you're really smart, you then add dynamic stability control, which is exactly what Mazda did to this new MX-5. Now, unlike most, you can actually play with this one. Hit the button once, well, it turns off the DSC, or the dynamic stability side of it. Hold it in for 7 seconds and you also get rid of the traction side, which allows you to throw the car around and run a solo one event. When it comes to going back on the street, you just recycle the ignition key, the lock comes back to life, and you're now safe and sound. The reason the dynamic stability control system works so well is down to the basics backing it up. The front double wishbones and rear multi-links are calibrated such that it dishes out equal measures of ride and handling. On an open road, the ride is firm but not harsh. Take the MX-5s to the skid pad and the car remains flatter than gravy on a plate, even when pushed to the point where it starts to drift. You know where you really appreciate the expanded dimensions is when you slip behind the wheel. To begin with, I don't have to duck to see underneath the windshield header. There's plenty of elbow room, and for a taller driver, well, you can now move the seat back a little further. You also get a very nice interior. Red leather seats if you go with the limited edition. There's also a premium audio system that has a party trick. When the roof's up, it actually changes the acoustic qualities of the audio system to reflect that environment. Drop the top down, it rejigs the whole thing, so you always get the best sound quality possible. Of course, the biggest difference between the Solstice and the MX-5 is the amount of trunk space. The Pontiac has virtually none. The MX, well, it's entirely usable. Finally, there's now a new powertrain. A new 2-litre engine pushes 170 horsepower and 140 pound-feet of torque through a slick-shifting 6-speed manual transmission. Now, this is more than enough power to be entertaining, yet not enough to get yourself into trouble. It also brings a much better 0 to 100k time of 8 seconds. On the flip side, the standard anti-lock brakes bring short 36-metre stops from the same speed. The third generation MX-5 is a better car because of all of the changes, but also because of the one thing they didn't change. It now has the power it always needed, it has the space it's always cried out for, and it now has electronic sophistication on its side. The one thing they didn't change, the charm of the car. You can drive the living daylights off this thing, and it still comes back for more. Indeed, from the driver's perspective, well, it's just as much fun as driving a go-kart.
The 2006 Pontiac Torrent is based on the Theta architecture, which is similar to the architecture of the Chevy Equinox. It is Pontiac's first small sport utility vehicle. The small utility, as you know, is the fastest growing segment in Canada, truck segment. And the vehicle is one of the largest in that segment, so it offers great versatility, great flexibility, standard V6 power and automatic, as well as a true Pontiac drive and handling. Powertrain is a 3.4-liter V6 engine. Made it to an Ace & Warner 5-speed automatic transmission that has adaptive controls that allow the transmission shifting to be smooth throughout the life cycle of the vehicle. You've got front-wheel drive as standard with on-demand all-wheel drive, which allows the vehicle, as soon as it senses slippage, to transfer up to 33% of the power to the rear wheel to get you comfortably out of any situation and any driving condition. Right off the start, the design is very, very different. The European inspired Pontiac design. You can tell from the front, you've got the Pontiac twin port chrome accented grille, the Pontiac Dart, the cropped headlights, projector beam fog lamps with the chrome accents, and then looking at the vehicle, looking up, you've got a tubular aluminum roof rail, as well as many accents throughout, standard aluminum wheels. From the interior, you've got a very European-inspired cockpit that has a lot of chrome accents, a darker ebony interior finish with the ability to match that with cashmere, and the look again and feel of all those materials are much more deliberately suited for guys that love to drive. You don't have to sacrifice fuel economy, and with this vehicle, we're really happy with the versatility, flexibility that it offers. It's greatly styled and it's a great offer, so a great value. We're really excited about the opportunity for Pontiac Torrent.
Studebaker Drivers Club is one of the largest car clubs in the world with over 13,000 members. It's actually the second largest. And together with a few other clubs, we typically host a zone meet every year, and each club takes its turn in hosting a zone meet. Last year, someone suggested, well, why don't we invite other orphans along to our car show? An orphan car is a car that's no longer produced. So Studebaker actually was in production from 1852 to 1966. So that would technically make Oldsmobiles and Plymouths now orphans. But we wanted ones that were at least older, 25 years old as well. Most of the independent manufacturers started going out of business in the early 1950s, and that's why we have a good selection of 1950 cars with the American Motors cars as well as the Studebaker cars.
You're supposed to smile when I'm driving a Studebaker,
I bought a 1955 Studebaker Champion Deluxe four-door sedan. And I've done a few customizing touches to it just to make it an even more unique Studebaker. And it's one of several I've had, but that's the one that's on the road right now. Back in 1955, chrome was sold by the acre. Buick was doing really well doing that. And Studebaker tried to follow suit. It's an awful lot of chrome to look at, so I took some of it out. And everybody had a 5-pound die-cast hood ornament in the front of their car too. We took that off. I put a floor shifter in it and dual exhaust on a 6-cylinder, which is quite unique, and made it into a real unique vehicle. I grew up with Studebakers. My dad bought his first one in 1953 when I was a toddler, and he bought 3 more after that. I learned to drive on them, had my first date in one. The history of the company and the uniqueness of the car, the variety of the models, the people in the club, the size of the club. There are 30 countries and 12,000 people involved in Studebakers around the world, and it's just been great.
This week we're in a small village in the Swiss Alps in Switzerland, and you know, this week with the S-Class we've been talking a lot about all the technology and engineering that goes into these vehicles, but you know, every now and then it's nice to come to a small town like this, see the cows coming home from the pastures, and know that some things never change. And speaking of some things that never change, let's head to the Quaker State Garage and join Bill Gardner.
Brad, here's another thing that never changes, and that's the importance of having a good, strong battery heading into a long, tough Canadian winter. I don't think that's ever changed. Now, we've got the hood open on our 05 Dakota here. This vehicle is less than a model year old, only 9,000 kilometers on it. Starts perfectly, no reason to suspect any problem with the battery here. Terminals are clean and tight. We're good to go. We don't even need to run a performance test on a vehicle like this. But our 2002 Yukon over here, the one the camera guys use, has got 70,000 K. It's about to be 4 model years old. So certainly doing a performance test on the battery is a relevant thing to check before we go into that tough winter. Now, the best thing to do is take your vehicle in for servicing and have the personnel do a performance test on the battery. They're going to use a load tester, a carbon pile load tester like this one. They simulate the load of the starter motor on a cold morning for that first startup. So they're going to crank in the appropriate amperage to load that battery up and read the terminal voltage under load. That's the best way to check it. Now you can make a sort of a seat of the pants test of your battery at home if you want to. On many vehicles, what you can do is turn on the parking lights, leave them on for 20 minutes or 20 to 30 minutes on a small car, 40 to 45 minutes on a larger vehicle like this one, and then just turn the key and see if that thing will crank over. Now this test is getting a little bit difficult to do on some new cars because with battery rundown protection, they actually shut the lights off for you if you inadvertently leave them on. So probably your fallback position would be just to take your car in for professional servicing, get them to do a carbon pile load test on that battery. Now when you're buying a new battery, you want to make sure that you're comparing apples to apples when you purchase, because there can be a big difference between the least expensive and most expensive battery. Bottom end could be $75 to $80, top end could be $125 to $130. So look at the performance criteria of the battery. Look at the cold cranking amperage, the reserve capacity of the battery, and what you're offered in terms of warranty and backup, roadside assistance, 800 numbers, etc. The name brand batteries are typically better in performance and give better warranty and better backup. The old story, you get what you pay for. And one thing as well, make sure that you've also checked the terminals, that they're clean and tight before you run any performance test. And just as a routine point of maintenance, if you see those terminals looking shaky, get them cleaned up and protected before you head into the winter. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 2006.
Some people think cars are getting too complicated these days. Well, take a look at this. That's the owner's manual for one car. They got a separate booklet for the service thing, some on a cell phone. There's a whole separate book on just how to operate the air conditioning and sat-nav system, and this is the regular deal. Of course, it's all in English and in French. That's amazing. Now, I used to say that the owner's manual was the least read book this side of the Bible. Well, now it's even bigger than the Bible. Some people say they'd like to have cars that are less complicated, but would they really? I mean, this particular vehicle over here, this is an Xterra by Nissan, and they advertise this as the SUV with everything that you need and nothing that you don't. This is supposed to be a back-to-the-basics vehicle for those rugged outdoorsy type guys. But you look inside this thing, it's got your power windows, it's got your air conditioning, it's even got steering wheel controls for the audio system. Is that a back-to-the-basics car? I don't know. But I mean, people say they want this, but if they did bring out a car with wind-up windows, no air conditioning, no sunroof, no radio, would anybody buy it? I wouldn't. I'm Jim KENZIE.
You know, I've never considered myself a role model, and nobody else does either, but would you consider a car as a role model? Well, that's how Mercedes-Benz regards the S-Class when it comes to comfort and safety. But of course, as we all know, this comes at a price. You pay a lot of money for this kind of engineering and technology. But you know, as we've said before, hopefully a lot of this new engineering will trickle down into cars that you and I can afford to buy, and that's good news. Now, you know, with 38% of the world market, the S-Class is #1 in its segment. And of course, Mercedes is hoping this new model will hold on to that #1 position. Well, I've only had a brief time behind the wheel, but you know what? When you get to this level of engineering, it's hard to find something wrong. But Graham will have a much closer look on a future test drive. Make sure you join us for that as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
The timing is predicted by the product life cycles, and the forecast for fuel prices is something we certainly have no control over. But what we said we wanted to do is get segment-leading fuel economy, something that we own with today's Tahoe and something that we substantially increased with our new Tahoe.
TSN's Motoring 2006 has been brought to you by the new Q from Quaker State. Unleash all your horses.